We work so you can play. MiniWarGaming's Snagabog's Greed.
Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and it's time for another story time for our Orc and Blood Angel narrative campaign, Snagabog's Greed. Now, in the last two sets of missions, the Orcs kind of had their hides tanned, if you want to look at it that way. The Blood Angel, Captain Sandini, was just ticked off, and he was like, we're just going to hit them back hard before they have a chance to really organize, and he did it well. He sent a big assault force against what looked like their command post in the northern continent, and he also led personally a force against the munition storage because he really needed to retake that for two reasons. One, can't let the Orcs play with all those guns and weapons and bombs and vehicles and everything else. It would just be a disaster if they continued to have access to that. And two, it's the only real munition storage on this planet. Remember, this planet isn't super populated with Blood Angels. It's just a training ground, so they don't have a lot of resources, and they needed it back. Well, he mustered so many forces that it was hardly a challenge. He just burned all of the Orcs to the ground at the command outpost, and the munition storage is now in the Blood Angel's hands. Now, the weird boy did get away, injured, but he did get away. But the big mech Snagabog was not at the command outpost, and that's what they thought. They wanted to go there and not only level that, but decapitate their leader, the big mech Snagabog. And unfortunately, he wasn't there, so they don't know where he is. He's scuttled off somewhere, and all he had left in charge were a few knobs who were just bickering amongst themselves and didn't even see the attack coming, and so were totally taken by surprise and burned to tiny little crisps. Probably was the most effective way to deal with Orcs because all their spores even would have been burned so much that very few of them would have actually survived. So totally purged there, and it feels like a big part of the Orc threat has been destroyed. Unfortunately, with this Orcs, there's always more Orcs. They're like mosquitoes. You swat one away, and all of a sudden, 3 more are there. And so they do detect that there are still more Orcs, but it doesn't look like too many. So the Blood Angels are doing well, even though their numbers are dwindling. They took heavy losses at first when the Orcs first got here. And remember, there's not a lot of them on the planet to begin with. And so they are struggling. But with the munition storage retaken and a lot of the Orcs killed, Captain Sandini is in a good mood and ready to go and kill some more Orcs and try to take care of that weird boy and try to root out where that big mech has gone. And then they start to detect something coming in. The big mechs have managed to scrounge together the materials from the munition storage and just other materials elsewhere, and they've built themselves a gigantic bomber. And this bomber is headed straight for the munition storage. And they can hear over their comms, they hear the Orcs going, "If we can't have the munition storage, neither can you!" And they plan on basically coming in and dropping their payload and just basically nuking the place with the combination of like melta-bombs strapped to missiles, strapped to plasma containers, strapped to who knows whether ammunition. It's just a big ball that the bomber's going to drop, and that'll just detonate, and it's just going to destroy the munition storage if it gets there. Now, thankfully, the Captain Sandini sees this coming a long ways away because, you know, Orc bombers and fighters aren't exactly the most stealthy things, you know, just pumping black smoke into the air. And so he musters his forces, and he actually pulls a lot of stuff out of the munition storage to set up the gun emplacements, his Aegis defense lines with his gun emplacements with the quad guns, and he gets his Devastators actually outfitted with flak missiles. Normally the Blood Angels don't have access to those, but for this mission we've decided to give it to them. Because really they should have it. And now that they got the munition storage, they do. And he's also going to do something a little crazy. He has decided that he doesn't want to just leave it to the gun emplacements to shoot down the planes because there's just so many of them that it might take too long and the bomber might get there. And so he's ordered his assault marines to actually jump onto the bomber to fight it and place melta bombs, and they've been armed with melta guns and of course their chain swords and stuff just to try to tear it to pieces. But the Orcs have their own storm boys who are ready to counterattack once the assault marines do that. And we go a step further, and Captain Sandini himself is donning a jump pack, and he is going to go into the fray. Now, thankfully, he's been upgraded to have +1 toughness, and so he's toughness 5, and so he's not going to get insta-killed as easily, but it's still a very rash move for him to do, and it's kind of showing his stability starting to go because he's just not, these Orcs are just not acting the way that he's used to fighting with Orcs, and he's used to fighting Orcs. In the meantime, not only do they see this bomber coming, but in the northern continent, just a few hundred miles away from the command outpost that they had just destroyed, they get this strange energy reading, something that they just cannot identify. It's not Orcish, it's not Space Marine-ish, it's not anything that they've seen yet. And so, while Captain Sandini musters his forces, Librarian Bryon comes forward and lets him know of this, but Captain Sandini's like, oh, I don't really care about that too much. Like, who cares? We got to take care of this stuff. And the Librarian requests that he can go instead, and Captain Sandini says, okay, take a small force and go and take care of that. So in our second mission, we're going to see what happens there as Librarian Bryon goes with a couple land raiders and drops off some Terminators and some tactical guys. Just a small reconnaissance force, but, you know, armed to the teeth, of course, because you never know what you're going to find. So this first mission with the big bomber is going to be here on YouTube, so you can go ahead and click the link below to watch that. And then the second mission with Librarian Bryon going after the strange energy readings will be in the vault, which will also be in the link in the description below. If you're not a vault member, you can still click it and you can sign up for a 7-day free trial. We had a ton of people sign up the past couple weeks when we've been posting these, so we know that people are really liking the stuff that's in the vault. And so if you can support us, that would be great, because the vault members are what allow us to do this. It's what gives us the majority of our revenue. YouTube advertising revenue isn't really that high, and so the vault members really allow us to continue funding MiniWarGaming and growing our content and doing fun narrative campaigns like this. And of course, leave your comments below and let us know how you think we're doing, and you know, just any ideas that you have for future campaigns as well. Let's go into mission number 1. Happy wargaming.